Hello, I'm Caroline Jones. In the past decade, there's been a quiet revolution in the way adoption is handled in Australia. Most likely you're aware of those reunions between birth mothers and the children they had to give up many years ago. Reunions only recently made possible by the lowering of the wall of shame and secrecy that used to surround adoption. Less well known are the cases where adoption is open from the outset, where biological and adoptive mothers meet and may even agree to some shared involvement in the upbringing of a baby. It can be a controversial choice, but it was the path chosen by Tara Smith for her beloved baby daughter.
Dearest Jeff, Annette and Jana, I have written this letter to you 1,000 times in my mind. It is so hard to know where to begin or how to put my many emotions on paper. My name is Tara, and I am Shanti Christine's birth mother. I guess I really want to convey a welcome to you into my life and a joy for Shanti to have such a wonderful family who will love and cherish her as I love and cherish her. I guess I should begin at the beginning with Shanti's story. I was 23 when I met Ben, Shanti's birth father. I fell instantly in love. This is a story about how I chose adoption for my child, Georgia Shanti. I chose a couple to parent her who I have grown to love and respect very much. I believe they make fantastic parents for her. I know that many of you watching this may find it hard to understand or accept the decisions that I made and the path through openness in adoption that we have all chosen. Looking back 3 years ago, at 23 and running my business, I never thought for a moment that my life would head in the direction that it has. I trained as a graphic designer and ended up fell into freelancing. My business was something I created so I could do my art and at the same time support myself. I imagined starting a family, I guess, in quite a conventional way. It was very important to me that I would be ready emotionally and financially, that I would have followed a whole lot of dreams, and that I would have a stable partner who was someone I'd chosen, and that a family was something I had chosen to create. Very different to what happened. February 20th, 1995. All I seem to be able to think about at the moment is this child that grows inside me, all the life choices associated with choosing to give birth to this being. I was shocked. I was devastated. It was the scariest thing I've had to face. There was this feeling of, wow, there's life inside me, and a feeling of just incredible love. It is so hard. I am being torn by my fears and indecision. I long to be young and carefree again. And yet I love this baby and so much want to share in her life. Yes, I was pregnant, and it wasn't just going to go away. I had to face my options, which were terminating or continuing the family with George's dad. The thought of destroying that being that I had so much love for, I couldn't face it, I just couldn't do it. Yeah. Unfortunately, our new relationship couldn't sustain those emotional pulls, and it was devastating for both of us when we did end it. My feeling so strongly was that I couldn't take a child and raise it and bring it into that relationship. I wish I wasn't so alone. I'm so scared. There is so much more to learn before motherhood. I don't want to do this alone. My younger sister Triska was a great buddy. I think it must have been very hard for Mum. And if she was here, she could explain all of that a lot more, but she's overseas at the moment. She's such a close friend for me, and for her to watch me go through the pain of the decision and also share in the joy of a pregnancy. It's these two very strange realities that were so different from each other. It's strange that this child was conceived and I carried her through pregnancy, and somewhere there was a couple waiting who would have a family, as Annette put it once, completed.
I'd known since I was about 15 years old that I was unable to have children. So even before we were dating, it was an issue for me. And then obviously when we started getting serious, we discussed it. And we always knew, even before we were married, that adoption was the only path. Think about the birth mothers a lot, especially in that waiting period. You know there's somebody maybe out there somewhere who is carrying the child that you're going to parent. Wonder what they're going to be like, whether you're going to like them when you finally do meet them, you're going to get on.
My child moves inside me often now. It is an amazing and exciting feeling. I feel how much my body has changed, and yet I can hardly remember. I was about 4 months pregnant, and I really had to face, well, I have to either be a single parent or there is adoption. And adoption is something I ran from for about 2 months. You know, it was the logical thing, and yet it was so scary to face that. I didn't understand the process that adoption is today, and of course adoption has a huge stigma associated with it, and that was, but then I'd be one of those, those birth mothers, and I'd be, my child would be, how could I cope? My child wouldn't be with me. It was incredibly scary. My knowledge was based on an adoption practice that was 20 years ago, as opposed to today, where children and birth mothers didn't see each other, and I found that a very hard concept to even contemplate.
She couldn't speak to anyone who could really understand what was going on, and I certainly couldn't understand what was going on in her mind. So what I saw was a very confused, very frustrated, sometimes very angry young pregnant woman who was so upset and so sad at times.
What helped was when friends who had been involved in open adoption talked to me about their experiences or friends' experiences, and how the birth mother had been visiting the child. And that felt okay for me because it meant I could still see her and I would know she was okay. And that, yes, I would miss her and I would grieve for her, and it would be really hard. But we'd still be a part of each other's lives. And I'd know she was okay and she was loved.
Of course we wanted to take the pain away, but you can't take the pain away. Of course we wanted to help her to make a decision, but what right did we have to make that decision for her? So it was a really traumatic time. It's very easy to create these fantasies. I had to face that whilst parents had said that they wanted openness in adoption, one day they might change their mind. That they might not cope anymore, that they might need to not see me for their own reasons. The adoption agency was great as a sounding board to provide me with a lot of information and very supportive. Whilst I knew that there was such a thing as open adoption, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know the legalities of adoption. My child moves inside me often now.
My ribs push up to my shoulders and often it feels like my belly will burst when I'm not eating. I'm eternity's older now, eternity's sadder, wiser, happier. Now I must prepare for the birth and the weeks following. Shanti Christine, born 2nd of June 1995, 2:40 a.m. My mum was there, grimacing alongside me. I lay her on my stomach and she looked at me with these big eyes and it was, wow, I meet you at last. It was beautiful. And so I took her home. And then, I suppose it's this whole thing of, wow, I'm a mum. Accept it, live it. I am her mother, you know. And for the first maybe 3 or 4 weeks, I just experienced that. And I also had to accept the situation. I had to make a decision then. And so I decided that I needed to experience what a separation was like to see if I could cope. I met her foster mum, Guy, who's gorgeous, who was wonderful, and I drove there and drove away again without her. I somehow managed to survive those 2 weeks and spend a lot of time thinking and a lot of time crying and feeling very, very confused and at the end of it made my decision. It was a huge decision. It was life-changing. And it was this numb, oh my God, I hope it's going to be okay. And a few days later it was a relief, you know, wow, okay, it's happening.
Tara would have been presented with 4 or 5 profiles of different families and was able to read all about the different families that she could choose for her child.
And out of that pool came a couple called Jeff and Annette and their daughter Jana, who of course are complete strangers on a piece of paper with a photo. And you go through this very strange situation. I felt like I was being God. And I mean, I'd much rather that I was God than someone else choose them for her, but it was so hard. You're choosing who your child is going to spend the rest of their life with.
I don't think any professional assistant's going to prepare you for the day when you pick up the child. And you've got this beautiful little child in front of you. And this is someone's child who's been given to you, and you've got to start from there and start nurturing that relationship. Because those little eyes are looking up at you and saying, I don't know you, who are you? They don't recognise the voice.
Dearest Jeff, Annette, and Jana, I have written this letter to you 1,000 times. I guess I really want to convey a welcome to you into my life. And a joy for Shanti to have such a wonderful family.
Tara had written a letter to us that we picked up at the agency before we drove over to the foster mother's house. It was some 18 pages long and filled with photos and virtually told us her story. At that time, Georgia was named Shanti, so it was Shanti's story.
I am both happy and sad, excited and fearful. It is the ending and the beginning, and it has been a long journey for both of us.
I guess I should be. So we read that on the drive from the agency and cried most of the way while we were reading it. Tara's letter more or less, I guess, set the tone of the relationship from the start. It would have been very easy without her letter to not consider her feelings that much. But she poured out her soul in this letter and told us of her tremendous love for Georgia and why she wanted her to be with us because of that love. And we couldn't help but feel a bond with her right from the start, even before we'd met her.
And I wish you all the happiness in the world. Thank you for giving us such a second chance. It was a time for me to get away so I could cry about it and be sad and feel my grief for that. It was a little musk stick. Oh, look. My gorgeous friend Young Sun, she was great. She is a friend beyond the call of duty. She was a pillar of support for me. It surprised me that her friends weren't there for her. Everyone else in society is judging her already. Where's the support?
When you fall pregnant, you're a bit of public property anyway. Everyone watches you. It's innate in human nature. Is she looking after that belly? Is the child going to be okay, you know? Then all of a sudden, here's this public property who then gave her baby away. You gave your baby away. It's so emotional, isn't it? I chose adoption. I don't give her to anyone. I chose a family, you know. I chose a different life for her than one I could provide.
Yeah, it was hard. And it's hard to see a good friend of yours go through an emotional trauma.
She's really gentle and caring and yeah, tough. Youngstown was a great sounding board for me in that time. It was part of a restart, yeah. I remember back then thinking, wow, I'm finding myself again.
She's got your same hands and feet though.
Does she?
Fingers and
After having been in so much grief and trauma and this incredibly unusual life experience, was facing that I did want to get back out into the world. I wanted to do something new and something exciting. So I went for the interview. It was a triumphant moment for me when I got that job. I was very lucky. Wow, you know, I did it. And it hasn't always been easy. It's been hard, really hard, to combine my grieving for her with my responsibilities in a work environment. That's been very, very challenging. The first time I met Jeff and Annette and Jana was when Georgia had been with them for 6 weeks. Oh, Jana came running in. Woo, yay, Tara! Big hug. And there was Jeff and Annette, and there was Chubba. Oh, she was so cute. And it was just this, oh, it was overwhelming. It was joy and sorrow and, oh, thank God, you know, I've met them. It's all imagination can cease to exist now. You know, I can touch them and they're real. Nervous, very nervous. You know, I want them to like me, but more than that, I want to know that George is okay. Our relationship developed from 6 monthly meetings and letters and photos to what it is now, which is very much more open where we bring each other and visit. Not every week and not every day, but often.
That'll wake the koala up. Yeah.
Most people, when they hear of the relationship we have with Tara, are quite astounded. Often the reaction is, do you have to do that? Why do you do that? Why do you want to do that? And it's very hard to explain to people that it's not so much that we have to, it's something that we really want to do for all of us.
For the adopted child, it's extremely important that as they move towards the future, that they know all about their past, because it fills in the pieces. And they pick up things from us as their adoptive parents, but they pick up a lot of things from their birth parents and their birth families.
No. Oh! It's been a hell of a lot of work. It's been worth every second of it. We've taken the time to nurture it. We haven't rushed in and assumed anything. The boundaries between us are not ever assumed. They've been learnt over time.
Anyone who's approaching having an open adoption would have to look at the relationship being founded on trust. Mutual respect for each other's lifestyles is very important. There's a lot of possibilities for conflict. If you didn't understand why they might react in certain ways at certain times too.
Well, she's part of my family now. She's like a big sister and it's really important to me. And Georgia sees her birth mother and Tara sees Georgia, and so they know who they are, and it's really special to me.
Very large part of the reason we got into this open adoption arrangement and that it's gone so far is because of our feelings for our children, for their futures, that they will grow up always having known their backgrounds and their families, not not having that sense of mystery, of something being missing that so many formerly adopted people have and speak of.
She'll know me. I won't be a fantasy. I won't be some unrealistic notion in a small child's mind. I'll be someone real who she can hold and say, I love you, Tawa. I hope the times when she grieves the decision that I made, that gradually she'll come to understand it.
Hello, I'm Jim Russell. I'm a cartoonist, and you might know me as the creator of The Pots, Australia's longest-running comic strip. Tonight's next Australian story is about a couple of mates of mine from Barossa Valley in South Australia. They're Glenn Lumsden and Dave DeVries. They've achieved the almost impossible by breaking into the American market and bringing a little Aussie culture to those ultimate American icons, the Phantom and Batman.
When I look around me and see what I've been able to achieve, and the fact that I live where I want to live and work the way I want to work, I just feel marvellously free. I would have been maybe 3 or 4, and I remember getting a Chrissy present from Auntie Jan, I think, and it was a Captain America comic, and it was a Magnus Robot Fighter, and an Alvin the Chipmunks comic or something like that, and I think really the first time I'd ever seen a comic, and I just read them back to back, for months, and I started copying all the pictures in them and stuff like that, and I was hooked after that. I remember when I was going through my rebellious phase, rebel without a clue, and the things, it was sort of like I was Bart Simpson for maybe 2 terms until I got my D, and then I realised I was more like Lisa Simpson. I just can't bear getting anything less than an A+. Devastated me, so I threw away my flip knife and my leather jacket and started being a girly swat again. I started working in comics sort of semi-professionally around 1983, and I was with a group of guys who were keen on comics, and we started publishing our own books. There's probably a different opinion on this, but I personally believe it's because we weren't good enough to have anyone else publish us, and that's actually where I met Dave around that time.
I decided to get into comics because it was one of the few things that I actually did when I was in my early 20s, where I actually felt myself saying, yes, I could see myself doing this 20 years from now. I think what I love about my work is the fact that it allows me to sort of be myself, to be creative. I can control my own hours, I can control who I deal with. There are times when I like to lock myself away and just focus on creativity. There are other times when what I like about the work is the hustling and getting out there and sort of chasing work down. It's a type of job which allows you to explore all sides of your personality.
Dave and I decided to go into business together around 1988 or 89, and we'd gone as far as we could go in Australia, and we just thought we needed a bigger market, so we thought America.